This comes from Trey. So let's be real. What is Cade Cunningham's potential? It's year 3, and he's making mistakes, can't win games, and doesn't impact winning yet.
I would argue that it's essentially year 2, but your point is still very valid. It's kind of crazy. Like his first year in the clutch, like he was one of like the top players in crunch time, like across the NBA, and like he had it. So I don't know what's going on this year because he definitely has been making mistakes down the clutch and has not been as clutch as he was his rookie year. I don't think his potential changes based on that this year. I think there's a lot that has impacted that. Granted, I'm sure most of it's on him, if not half or a lot of it or whatever you want to allocate to that. But you got to think about the whole year, the spacing, the different lineups, it's, and it sort of goes back to the Ivy point too, where it's like they've sort of been thrown into this like, what are we supposed to do together situation? Like, all right, like, are you supposed to initiate this possession? Like, or is that like, I feel like there's a lot of like undefined roles, but I mean, no, Cade's been, I think, fantastic the last few weeks. He's been fantastic most of the year. I know a lot of people, especially when he was out, were like, well, Ivy is probably the guy now. But I think Cade's potential is still as high as it was when he was drafted. But the crunch time stuff this year has definitely been a concern.
Yeah, I think when we talk about his potential, I think a lot of people get caught up in that. They get caught up in what he could be, the comps coming out of college. People were comping him to Luka Doncic because they were, similar, 6'6" point forwards. They could score at all 3 levels. Mm-hmm. I don't think Cade Cunningham is a Luka Doncic type player, but I think they have similar skill sets.
Yep.
To your point, yeah, it's year 3. He missed all last season.
Right.
To me, I think this is more of year 2. I think this is, not to make excuses, but this is his second year in the NBA actually playing meaningful NBA games. He played 12 games last year. I don't really count that. And you could tell if you watched in his second season, there was a lot of discomfort in that leg. He wasn't hitting his shots. He barely had any lift. This year, I've seen probably more dunks in year 3 than I saw in year 1 and year 2 combined.
Yeah.
I think his knee, at times, it feels good, but there are also days where it doesn't feel good. And that's when you see him icing it, rubbing it. Who knows if he's 100% healthy? I think this time of year, everybody has some type of ailment. I mean, it's the end of the season. It's March. You're like 67, 68 games in. And yeah, he's going to make mistakes. And to your point, yeah, the spacing at the beginning of the year was atrocious. Having Killian Hayes out there next to Cade as his backcourt mate, I thought was atrocious. Mm-hmm. It was just, I don't really get it. I get it from a defensive standpoint, but if you can't score the ball, it's terrible spacing. It's almost like Greg Monroe, Josh Smith, Andre Drummond type spacing.
Who won more games, by the way, than this team?
Yeah. And they were a 2K cheat code. But I think that you can have a conversation about Cade and what his potential might be. I think he can be your lead guard and give you 23, 7 and 7 a night. But until this team actually puts a legitimate roster around him and legitimate NBA players, it's really hard to evaluate what he could possibly be in the NBA.
I think like my sort of counter argument to being worried about any potential is like, look at what he did do starting next to Killian and Isaiah Livers and Kevin Knox. And, recently starting next to Asar and Stu, who defensively, great duo. Offensively, terrible spacing, even though Stu's been better recently. I think he's done so much with just terrible spacing. And like up until the deadline, or really up until the Muscala trade, they really lacked in the NBA player department. Him and Gallinari started being like, oh, you could have spacing on your NBA team. Oh my God, look what happens. They start winning some games because they have bigs who could stretch the floor. And then the deadline comes. Troy did a decent job of bringing in more NBA players, which is all we've been begging for all season. I think that hopefully they do a better job this summer, whoever's in charge, hopefully not the current people. But hopefully you're able to surround him so that every moment he's on the floor, he has spacing and a lob threat. And if you can give him that, I think you're going to see his efficiency go up even more. I think he'll be better in crunch time. Because, like, look at how much he gets blitzed this year. And I know, like, the best players do, and they deal with it and get better. But it's like, just imagine he has better spacing around him. You can't blitz that. Like, you can't triple team him when he has 4 shooters on the floor, 3 shooters. But, yeah, I'm not worried. But I understand why it's like, all right, like, crunch time Cade has not really been here most of the year.